And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside SP's off. Bring in SP's off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go. Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lon Seidman on behalf of NSF, and this is our show Countdown to Launch, where we cover all of the developments leading up to the second orbital flight test of Starship. And just to recap where we were yesterday, when we started yesterday's marathon show, we had no launch license and an unstacked rocket. We ended that show with a license and a stacked rocket, but now if we take a look over at Starbase, they're in the process of destacking the rocket once again. So we've got a lot to talk about today because it doesn't look like, actually we know, that Friday's launch date is now going to extend to Saturday, which will be the new launch date and time. We're going to get into all the details of that in a second, but I want to introduce our experts on today's call. We have Adrian Bile. How you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Finally able to join one of these. So I'm really looking forward to bring the good news today.
That's right. Hopefully we'll have some good news to chat about. And also Sawyer Rosenstein is here. How you doing, Sawyer?
I'm doing pretty good. Again, was excited for launch tomorrow. Now it just means I'm excited for launch Saturday.
Yeah, so let's talk about Saturday here. First of all, we're looking at Saturday with a much narrower launch window, Sawyer. So why don't we talk about that first? Because before, if we were going to go tomorrow, there was about a 2-hour window. Saturday's window is 20 minutes, and it opens up at 7 a.m. Central Time, and it goes to 7:20. Why such a short window?
We don't know the exact reason why it's the shorter window. It could be a number of different things. It could be something to do with other spacecraft or things flying overhead. It could be due to the fact, again, of all the different things they have to close with airspace and water. Adrian, I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else of why they might narrow this down to 20 minutes. But again, it's as of now, no official word as to why it's so much shorter.
I agree.
So we will, and I guess this creates a challenge for SpaceX because if they can't get it off the ground in that 20-minute span of time, it gets delayed further. And we were talking before the show that it looks like there's some weather challenges if we go too much further out, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern, especially as we get into next week, as it's supposed to be a little bit on the cloudier, windier side, basically things that you would not want to launch in. And then comes the next tricky part. So this is what makes it very important to hopefully get it off this weekend, is that you have not so great weather Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday here in the United States is Thanksgiving. And as was mentioned in yesterday's countdown to launch, there is that clause that they have the agreement with the county and the city that they're in, basically saying, hey, the main road right around Starbase that you close for launch, you're not allowed to close it for the Thanksgiving holiday itself, as well as the following Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I believe Monday as well. So you're looking at the 27th or the 28th as the then next earliest likely launch attempt.
So in other words, it better get off the ground Saturday in that narrow window, or this might be an even longer wait. And of course, we've got people down there as well, so it would make life a lot easier for everybody if we could just get this thing off before Thanksgiving. And of course, Starbase is located on a main road. It's not like this is some space center. There's a Starship base right next to a road that people have to use to go back and forth to their homes and to work and everything else. So that's compounding things a bit. Adrian, right now we're looking at the Starship getting destacked once again. We can also call this show the stacking show because we often happen to just come on when they're doing these operations. So what happened? Why are we deciding not to launch, and why are they taking the rocket apart again?
Yeah, about 2 to 3 hours ago, this show was still supposed to be a show where we talk about like all the cool things we would see in the next 24 hours, the countdown, and like everything you would need to know before launch. That changed suddenly when the hot staging transporter, or the hot staging stand, was transported back to the launch site, which raised some alarm bells because, well, we expected this wasn't needed anymore. So of course we then started to puzzle why would this happen. There was some suddenly the X live stream of SpaceX was delayed a day. Then it was going back again. So we saw some hints. We saw something happening, and apparently this all relates possibly to a grid fin test that was conducted earlier today, because Elon Musk confirmed on X that this is indeed thanks to a replacement of a grid fin actuator, which is apparently damaged. And just to recap the tricky situation here, the grid fin actuators are hosted below the hot staging ring. The problem here is, to remove the hot staging ring, you need to remove the ship, which are they doing right now. And once they have that removed, we expect the crane, which has already moved in as well, to remove the hot staging ring. And once that all happened, they can actually work on this actuator. So, kind of complicated part that could break here. And of course, it kind of disappointing was so close to launch, but well, you want to have working grid fins if you fly this, because otherwise they might give you some trouble going up and down.
Yeah, you kind of want those things working ahead of time, which is why they test these things before they go up. And one of the things that I've been really fascinated with and impressed by with this whole process, because we have witnessed now this particular Starship combination getting stacked and destacked now. We've had 7 stackings. This is now the 8th destack, if I'm not mistaken. So we're up there numerically. But when you think about what this would have looked like with something like Artemis or the shuttle, where you had to bring the entire stack back into a VAB, for example, to do these repairs. This is all happening at the launch site. So Sawyer, to some degree, this kind of speaks to the very different mindset of Starship, that you can work on it right at the pad, take it apart at the pad, and put it back together again. This rocket's not been brought back inside since it was sent out there a few months ago.
Exactly. It seems like right now, the bays that they have, the mega bay, the high bay, the new one they're building, those are more for construction than repair at this point. They're doing as much as they can out at the launch pad. And I know at one point there was discussion about creating something out at 39A where they could encapsulate Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy, although mainly that was for classified payload loading, but as a way to then also be able to go out and work on the vehicle at the pad without having to lower it or roll it back into the HIF there. So it really is a progression in that sense. And it's also interesting with this one in the fact that with the grid fins themselves, here you have one less factor to deal with than you do with Falcon 9, in that the Falcon 9 grid fins fold in and out. These grid fins just stay out. So when you turn to actuating, it has nothing to do with folding. It's literally just, will it or won't it move?
And we got word of the delay by our own cameras, which are at Starbase, including our new camera trailer, which replaces Danger Van, which was hopefully going to get us some awesome shots of the launch tomorrow, but now it'll be on Saturday at 7 a.m. Central Time, so mark your calendars. And we kind of had a feeling that something was going to be delayed because of the shot that we have on screen right now of this crane and this large thing that apparently is used to help grab that hot staging ring. Adrian, what did they bring out to the pad, and what are they going to do with that thing?
So there's 2 components they need for this. There's basically the load spreader to lift the hot staging ring, which just attaches it, and that's the way to rise it. And there's also a stand, because you don't want to put your very sensible rocket hardware just on a flat concrete area. So they have a stand for it where they put it on. It's a very basic version of what they also use to, for example, put starships and boosters on, but it's like a less and reinforced, very small one, and that's where they started on. And again, as soon as we saw this was like, uh-oh. So it's the definition of an uh-oh as soon as we saw that rolling down the pad.
And the words I saw in the back channel chat were not as family friendly as that was it. But I think this is the thing, Sawyer. Like everyone was really looking forward to tomorrow, right? Everything looked like it was on track, but this is space, and this happens, right? So, one thing, Sawyer, that I noticed though is that the amount of time it takes to destack this rocket and restack it has been reduced significantly. Have you noticed that?
Oh, dramatically. I mean, there was at one point in the early days with 4 and 20 that you were talking, 3 hours at some points. But then you get down to, I think it was about 90 minutes for a while. And then 45 minutes seemed to be like, all right, that's about the number they're at. And now, I mean, yesterday, the stack itself was a record at just over 30 minutes from off the ground to on top of the hot stage ring. So they're getting much better at this good news, bad news, because they have to destack it and restack it so many times. But again, they've got this process down that it's actually kind of a good thing of, all right, if we do need to take it down and put it back up, you're talking, an hour total, 30 minutes down, 30 minutes up, if you don't have to take the hot stage ring off, which unfortunately in this case, it seems like they will.
Right.
It's kind of, just to add to that, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, that we are looking at a rocket where they had a major part of hardware breaking and they have to destack the rocket. And we are talking about a 1-day delay right now. Like, imagine this happening with basically any other rocket, any other rocket, and they have to destack it and fix something on the, on that area on the forward dome. That would basically, for every other rocket, not be a 24-hour recycle. That would be probably a few more days. And the funny thing with this even is, at first we were unsure if that would even delay it by a day, because we were like, okay, they need an hour to stack, and then an hour to destack, and then they have some hours. They still have probably 4 or 5 hours to work on this, but they probably need a bit more. But it's a crazy thought that they can just disassemble and assemble this in a few hours.
And, in watching this, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what? They might be able to pull it off, given how quickly they were able to do everything yesterday. And I recall back, this goes back now probably to 2012 or 2013. I was at KSC covering STS-135 for a local publication. And SpaceX was giving tours, the kind of tours they don't do so much anymore, of their Cape Canaveral facility. And they had a very boisterous spokesperson who was a former newspaper reporter there. His name was Bobby Block, and he was, shouting out all these factoids about how they, designed the pad so efficiently and how inexpensive everything is. And one thing that really stuck out to me was he was constantly trying to compare their methods against the incumbents and how much more efficient and quicker they were at different things. And he mentioned about the fact that with Falcon 9, that they were designing their facility that they could roll Falcon 9 out, get it on the pad, get it vertical, and then if something went wrong, they could just put it back down, bring it back into the shed, and get it fixed in a matter of hours. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with Starship at a much larger scale, that at the end of the day, as you both mentioned, this would have been pretty much a showstopper for months if it was SLS or the shuttle, if it had to get rolled back in. But here, it's already out there. They can destack it. We're already seeing that the Starship is almost to the ground at this point, and look how quickly it's coming down. So the confidence has been building there. So I got the impression that as bad as this wait that we've just experienced for the Fish and Wildlife Service and the FAA to go on, SpaceX has been really honing their craft a bit during this time, because this is, again, I think 6 or 7 times now that this rocket's been destacked, or maybe the 8th.
8, yeah.
What do you think they've learned?
I mean, I'm sure they've learned a lot in terms of alignment, because that seemed to be one of the things that we've seen is them making sure that it's perfectly centered over it, where they've had to sometimes then release it and then reattach it after wiggling it a bit. Same thing with dampening any of the potential wiggle of the rocket as well, as it's first getting off of the transporter, the SPMT, and then working its way on top of the vehicle itself. It's those little tiny details that make a difference. And what you were saying before, by the way, back in July of 2011, I remember that conversation because I was there as well. And the interesting thing is what you were talking about came true. We have seen it where Falcon 9 has gone vertical, even Falcon Heavy. They realize, oh, we have to fix something. They've lowered it and then put it right back up and launched the next day. So that's only the first progression of it. And keep in mind, that one, you're only talking about the rocket going flat and then up again. Whereas in this case, you're talking about having to remove the entire thing and put it back, and we're still talking just one day.
And it's pretty incredible when you think about not only the engineering that goes into the rocket, but the ground support here that has been a big focus of everything that SpaceX has been doing over the last couple of months to get this to where it is. Now, if you're just joining us, we had a bunch of people just come in. Unfortunately, the launch that we were hoping would happen tomorrow, Friday, is now going to happen on Saturday. The launch time is still 7 a.m. Central Time here in the United States of America. And the window, though, is a much more narrow window. We're looking at 20 minutes versus 2 hours. So the window on Saturday now, which is the new launch time that's been announced by SpaceX, is between 7 a.m. Central and 7:20 a.m. Central, which means there's very little margin for error here. And I'm sure SpaceX, Adrian, they probably would have preferred the launch tomorrow, wouldn't they?
Absolutely, but I have some really interesting facts that Alex just provided for us, which are I'm here to give people hope, because you would think that over a shorter window the chance is lower, right? So for the first attempt, they did one attempt on April 17, as we all know, and then launched on April 20th. The April 17 window, which ended up not being the launch window, was 2 hours long, while the April 20 window was just 62 minutes. And they launched 5 minutes into this window. So that's why maybe, like, of course, this is more like a fun statistic, but I think it's one that can give you hope. Like, they can make the opening of the window. Of course, they would have preferred a bit more wiggle room to troubleshoot, to, if something goes on, maybe have a bit more room to troubleshoot these problems. But, well, we have seen them make it work. And then again, with Falcon 9, once Falcon 9 is in countdown, they can only launch at a single second. And they have perfected this approach. Like, the reliability of Falcon 9, once it's in countdown to launch, is something that SpaceX really made work.
And they sure have. And I'm hearing some feedback from the chat that I might be a little too hot here. So I'm going to turn my audio down a bit. Hopefully that will help in the chat, and I'll check in the back channel if that made a difference here or not. We are working on some new streaming technologies here too, as we're getting ready for the big day. So we appreciate everybody giving us some feedback on how we're working technically here. Hey, I wanted to acknowledge some folks in our chats. And first here, I want to acknowledge Jimmy J with a super chat, who appreciates everything that you guys do and how well you explain everything for someone who is losing their vision. Your explanations and descriptions of everything going on is so visual and beneficial. So thank you so much. And thank you for your support. And I'm glad that we're able to help you understand what's going on here, because that's what we're about, is really sharing our love and passion of space and all things space, and making sure that everyone who is watching and listening can get what we are trying to help convey and teach and learn together. So thank you very much for your support here. Musical Wolves says, is this the world record for the most restacked rocket? Sawyer, I think that might be the case, right?
I would think so. If you're talking about prior to a single launch, yeah, because I mean, shuttle, they obviously would fly it and then reassemble the stack each time. So I guess if we're talking not shuttle, then yeah, I would say so. This is definitely, I don't want to say unusual, but it's a new rocket, so I guess everything is unusual when it's only the second test flight.
Right, and this is, what we do know is that this is the most powerful rocket that will have ever been launched, I think. Adrian, am I wrong in that superlative?
It's basically, the question always is how many Raptors will survive the initial ignition,
right.
that because that will make the caveat of, like, is it the most powerful one? Because the current record is held by, well, SpaceX Starship. It will be, however, I think the tallest rocket, because the hot staging ring makes it 1.8 meters, if I recall correctly, taller.
Yep.
So because Starship was before the tallest rocket, it will beat its own record. It will once again be the tallest rocket to ever fly. So there you go. That statistic for sure it will break. But again, thrust, I will wait until like T+5 seconds to call that record.
And Sawyer, we know a lot has changed on this Starship versus the one we saw launch in April. And it's funny, when you look across the launch pad here, it looks the same. The launch complex looks the same, but a lot has been updated and noted in these FAA documents. What are some of the larger things you think about this new Starship that kind of separates it from the one that we saw not get as far as they would have liked last time?
Do you mean the booster, the ship, or both?
The whole thing, the whole package. Things
I
that
mean,
kind of stand out to you that are big differences.
I think one of the big things in terms of trying to get as many engines to light as possible is the new shielding around them. Because we had seen some of the engines that appeared that they had some holes in it and were leaking some gas out of them, which was not great. So they've got the new engine shielding, which I remember we first saw them testing that at McGregor, on McGregor Live, and now they're actually attached on these Raptors. Also, to help prevent that, obviously, the water deluge system underneath, where instead of just the little Fire-X misting kind of from the top of the orbital launch mount there, you have the giant plume of water that comes out from underneath in a way to try and help save stage 0 as well as the engines in that case as well. And then, obviously, the hot staging ring, hopefully that will be great because obviously the vehicle didn't separate last time, so we want to see that. And the one thing we don't want to see, but we're glad is there, is that they've updated and upgraded the flight termination system. They did do a test of it at Massey's because last one, the flight termination system was activated, but it took about 40 seconds for the vehicle to break apart, and that was kind of under its own forces more so than the actual flight termination system. So they've upgraded that, and a reminder that is an automated flight termination system. So it's not somebody on the ground that we know of pressing the button. It's the computers on board going, "Oh crud, this isn't good, kablooey."
Right, so the computer, the AI will decide.
Well, take that as you will.
Yes, this is a little bit more data driven. So I did adjust my my audio again, so hopefully I got everything fixed here. We are there's all these moving parts when you do a live show like this, and how audio gets from me to NSF headquarters, and so we'll get it working before the end of the show. But I think we're getting better here with each adjustment. So so we're looking now over at the Starbase, and it looks as though Starship is almost down into its little holder there. What comes next? Is that when they start working on the hot staging ring?
Yes, that's definitely the expectation. Once this is down, I think they will start to get the hot staging ring attached to the crane, and that's a very quick process. I even wonder, that might be an interesting thought. Will they even? Oh yeah, they will, because their stand is there. Because for a moment I was like, will they even put it down, or will it just be like crane attached and then? But of course they will put it down because the stand is there. I answered my own question in my head there. But yeah, they will put it on the stand, and the next thing we would then probably see is the work platform being extended to the booster again, which are on the ship QD, and then they will enter that probably, and yeah, hopefully repair it in a day. Because, well, right now, they still want to fly this in 39 hours, 32 minutes, and 53 seconds, which still, it's a day delay, but it's not that much. It's still this weekend, so everybody be happy.
At least between 39 minutes, 32 seconds, and 39 hours and 32 minutes, and 39 hours and 52 minutes from now. Again, that 20-minute window. So they have the time in there. So anytime in those 20 minutes on Saturday, we'll take it. But yeah, we'll see how that work ends up actually going there. Because as we talked about, and as Elon pointed out, this isn't just a repair. We've talked about before where maybe they just go up in a cherry pick or repair something, or use the work platform that they have and then come back down, as opposed to replacing the whole actuator system itself, which is, I know we were talking about this before, it is electric based. It's not pneumatic, but still, it's a whole system you've got to replace.
And so there's work to do, and hopefully my audio is better now to the folks in the chat. I would love to hear any 5x5s or 1x5s. I'm making adjustments each time I talk here, so hopefully we'll dial it in and get it right for the rest of the show. I do have a chat question here, because we're talking a lot about Saturday as the launch date, and that might be the date in which it does actually launch. But it's possible that we could be looking at Sunday, Sawyer. I know we talked a little bit about that at the outset. Is Sunday a possibility too?
It absolutely is. We still have the potential road closures listed, the TFRs, the flight restrictions, the not Mars, notice to mariners, no TAMs, notice to airmen, now air missions, are all there. It gives them the opportunity to try it. We'll see. Again, hopefully they don't have to, but if they do, it is there. And then the main thing to watch for besides the closures there is the weather, which right now the ground weather looks okay. There may be a few clouds on Saturday per the current forecast, but the big thing to watch for is upper level winds. It doesn't seem like that big a deal, but it's very big because that causes wind shear, and that could push your entire vehicle sideways in a direction you don't want it to go, of which then you have to hope that the Raptors can correct for it without overcorrecting for it and potentially cause damage or stress on the vehicle that isn't expected. So that's why upper level winds are that important to watch out for. Saturday seems like it might be close to within limits, and Sunday, though, is really pushing the borderline of good versus potentially scrub worthy. Again, all of that is, as of right now, they will draw, launch weather balloons and drop JSONs and things to confirm all of that.
And so this is just like any other launch where you've got those weather balloons going up ahead of time to get a feel for what those winds are in real time to know. Given that Starship is so big, do upper level winds have a greater impact than a smaller rocket? Because more surface area to work against?
Typically, it's kind of the opposite, because keep in mind you've got the lighter rockets. The smaller ones are typically lighter. So when they do push on it, it's pushing on a much, lighter vehicle and also a narrower vehicle. This thing is a very wide boy, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. So it's, I think, more of an issue with those smaller vehicles because of those couple of reasons. It's at least more dramatic. But regardless, when you're talking 150 to 200 knot potential crosswinds, that's not going to be great on any rocket.
That's right. So we will, I guess, if the winds don't work, then we're going to have a delay, and then we have the thanks. And then, so we go from weather and technology to holidays and traffic on the main road, which could impede their ability to launch.
Just to point out here, right now we see the drone checking out the final placement of the ship here on the stand. You can see the drone on the left side of the stand there, flying around and being used as a camera for them to observe the final placement here of the ship on the stand. Kind of interesting always how they use this technology.
Yeah, we see that drone a lot, and I guess the reason is that typically when we hear the klaxons down there at Starbase, which you can hear on our NSF cameras when they do set those things off, there's nobody around, so the drone are the eyes. Yeah,
they usually evacuate the whole launch pad for these kind of operations, at least like the imminent area, because, well, yes, you don't expect the rocket to drop, but you're still lifting like a 100-ton, 150-ton big steel ship around, and if that drops, well, you don't want to have anybody near that. So being a bit in the clear there and making sure that you have a bit space to clear around it is probably a good idea.
And Sawyer, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, if I check our clocks here, we pretty much observed this first part of the operation being completed or almost completed in about a half an hour here. It's pretty quick. They've been getting faster. Yeah,
at this point, it's been 32 minutes from when they first started lifting it off of Booster 9 to where it is now, where they're just checking the alignment before placing it down. That's unbelievably fast. Like we talked about, again, just over 30 minutes to go up yesterday was a new record. I think just going down in about 30 minutes is close to a new record as well. I'd have to look at the exact timing and wait to see when this fully goes down. But yeah, fast.
Fixed. Now here's the question I want to put up here, because this is kind of like the ongoing battle that we've seen year after year, decade after decade when it comes to spaceflight and safety. There's always this pressure to go. In aviation, they call it get there-itis, versus being safe and taking your time. And this question from C.A. Mintmeyer says, could SpaceX's speed of fixing the problem hurt them? Wouldn't it be better to test the fix a fair bit? We don't want another Kerbal-like situation. Clearly, they want this Starship stack to do better than the last one. Do you think they might be wise to wait a little bit longer, Adrian? Sawyer? this might be a good fight question.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. We'll see if we disagree here. I will just start going here. I think based on
Kevin wants the salacious conflict, so there you go. Kevin and our
yeah, we'll see. We'll see, Sawyer, if you have a counter opinion here. I think SpaceX has proven that this approach works for them. SpaceX over time has been the company that iterates fast and breaks things on the way. And that has been their approach. Now, you could argue that there are some circumstances where it maybe would have been a good idea to wait a bit more and test a bit more. But on the other hand, their current approach of this rapid going there brought them the absolute dominance of the international launch market right now. And also the situation of having the biggest rocket of all time on the pad here. I think there's always this problem of like if a culture and if an approach works for you 99% of the time, and there's this 1% where sometimes it might not work, it's hard to find these 1%. And of course, in retrospect, you can always say you should have waited there. But well, in retrospect, it's always easy to say.
I'm glad we're in fight mode because I actually have a slightly different opinion. Wow, fight mode worked. I'm from the old school days, I'll say it. Again, I covered the space shuttle as media, so just give you an idea there. There's something, you had what was it, takeoff-itis? The term, yeah, get there-itis. The term in rockets is go fever. It's the same type of thing where you always just want to go, you want to get the rocket off the ground, you want to get the next mission up and going. That has bitten NASA in the butt a few times, unfortunately. Thankfully, some of them did not risk the lives of people. Unfortunately, 2 of them did, with Challenger and with Columbia. So you always run that risk of, if you go too fast, you get complacent. You go, oh, all right, we've seen this before on another launch. This time it'll be fine, when it might not be. So I feel like you get more out of, if you see something wrong, learning to fix it then and there, because then down the road, if you see it again, then it's, oh, we fixed this once before, we know what to do, or you can make an iterative design change for all of the future vehicles down the line, since, you're going to be building a lot more of these. So that's my point of view, in that fast is definitely good, but you don't want that go fever all the time to the point where you get complacent and then have a big problem. Adrian, you want to say something?
Yes, I would.
Sir.
I agree on a lot of things you just said, and I think what I want to add is on crewed missions and on anything that involves high, for example, also high important science payloads. On these missions, go fast and break things shouldn't be mentality. And to be fair, I think so far SpaceX has not shown that mentality on crew missions. Like, they're very successful with their crew program, and I totally agree. Like, especially on crew missions, there's no we will see if it breaks on the way. It's you need to make it sure that it works the first time. So I think on an uncrewed test flight, there's a bit more wiggle room to go fast and break things, because it's an uncrewed test flight that doesn't endanger crew and doesn't endanger any other scientific payloads. However, things like the FTS probably should work. I will also add this down the line. I really want a working FTS down the line. That's my one add to this. I really think safety mechanisms. If you go fast and break fast, your last line of defense needs to work.
Right. Yeah, just don't land on my head. As someone who lives on the ground, I prefer not to have rocket parts landing on my head, so that's good. And I would add my voice to this mix. I believe that to a large degree, kind of what we were talking about earlier, that one mitigating factor in this go fever, at least for SpaceX, is that the penalty for fixing something is not as severe for their design as it might be for a shuttle or something else, where an equivalent to this grid actuator issue we're talking about today that has to be repaired would have resulted in weeks of setback on any other rocket earlier than this one. Here, we're looking at a 24-hour push and having that repair done right on site. So I think to some degree that this kind of gives you some wiggle room in the sense that you can still have go fever and you can still fix something properly, because the penalty for fixing is not a rollback or something like that. Another thing that I see SpaceX having a lot of value for, at least insofar as the push to try to see how far they can get things to work at a level that might not be safe for human spaceflight, is when you look at Starlink. Starlink is their own internet service provider. It's kind of a sunk cost, if you will. And I think they've been doing a lot of experimentation with Starlink launches, Sawyer, because they're on, what's the booster now that's had almost over a dozen launches and landings. They wouldn't do that with a human-rated human flight, right? But I mean, that's giving them some ability to take some risks in a way that doesn't harm anyone.
Right. I believe it's B1058 that now has flown 18 times, which is a SpaceX booster record for sure. And crew missions are now certified to fly on previously flown boosters. Now, they're not going to fly it on one that's flown 10 times, maybe once or twice, but they're still doing it. So it is true, though, that you would rather take the risk on something that is your own payload versus somebody else's AIM-06. So, there's always that risk that it's going to happen, and sure, it will probably cause a slowdown in launches of Falcon while they still investigate the cause. But yeah, you're getting a lot of information learned. And that's why also with these, I don't think it's a bad thing to use that Go Fever in this instance, because it's an experimental vehicle. It's brand new. This is only the second time it's expected to lift off of the launch pad. So things are going to break. You almost want things to break so that you know what to fix, so you end up with a perfect vehicle a couple launches down the line. So it's not a bad thing to launch a lot and to experiment, especially if the risk is as low as it is at this moment.
And certainly they have plenty more Starships in the hopper there, if you will. So I made the joke yesterday that it's like a Tesla distribution center at the end of the quarter. There's Starships everywhere. Just gotta clear them out. So hopefully
they don't have more in the hopper. That stopped flying a while ago.
Oh, yeah, good one. That's why we have you on. The pun master is on on.
Gotta use a pun token.
Gotta use a pun.
I'm so glad we are doing this show with cams, because then you can see the pain.
And you can see the joy that I make in causing pain.
Hey, I got a question here. This is actually relevant to what we are currently witnessing over at Starbase. This is coming from Heat Beat Repeat Metalworks with a super chat. Great work as always to all at NSF. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts? And this is very relevant because we're going to watch this hot staging ring get taken away in a second. What are your thoughts on a crane being added to the top of Mechazilla for hot stage ring duties in the future? That to me sounds a bit scary, but I don't know if Adrian or Sawyer have any input on whether or not a crane on the top of the crane makes sense. What do you guys think?
Do you, my initial thought is, do you want one more thing on this tower that technically doesn't need there to be? Like, that you don't lose anything by having a crane close to it and be able to operate it. I would even say it gives you more flexibility, because this is not a part you need during a launch, and a part you can actually move away before the launch. That's a good thing. Right. I don't think you would gain anything from having one more thing on this tower that potentially could break during a launch and gets exposed to 33 or some number below that Raptor engines.
And one thing that we learned yesterday in our discussion is that those cranes can be put into a safe position for launch, so it's not like it's impeding anything in a way that would be an issue. So, yeah, pretty interesting stuff. So we should probably be able to see that hot staging ring coming off in a little bit. Here's a question from Martin, another super chat. I assume the repair isn't something that could be completed overnight with ship restacked and then ready for Friday, as they were quick to delay it. Sawyer, I think that's probably, they need some time to test that actuator again, right? Because they were testing the fins yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's part of their standard getting ready for countdown to launch. Hey, that'd be a good show name.
What do you know?
But that's part of the testing, is you go through all the systems. I mean, even with Falcon 9, they still go through all their system checks before they start their fuel load. Because once you get that fuel load, you're in a whole different part of the ball game here. So I think they will definitely be testing it again, test all of these mechanical systems, make sure everything is working, so that way when they do fuel it, they know that they have done everything they can up to that point to go ahead and actually go for the liftoff, because once you load that vehicle with all that propellant, you then, if something goes wrong or you have to scrub, refill the tank farms, get everything loaded back up, bring in all the trucks. You're talking a couple of days versus something like this where, hey, we caught it now, we can do a quick little mechanical fix, retest it, and it's a day.
And actually, there's a related question here from our chat, came in from Dave. And we got to think about all the different tanks that have to be filled here. We've got methane, we've got the liquid oxygen, and now we got water for that tank that has to put all that water out very quickly at launch time. That's a lot of stuff to refill. And Adrian, they don't have enough tankage or enough storage in those tanks to fully fuel the rocket and the water deluge system and then quickly reset, right? They have to delay a day or two if they do have to use those items, right?
Yeah, they also, one of the commodities they lose the most actually is nitrogen, because they use nitrogen for the recondensing of the methane, and they also use it for the subcooling of the whole system. Nitrogen is like used a lot in these, and no, they cannot just easily support 2 launches with this. Based on everything we know, there seems to be an optimistic timeline of a 48-hour recycle, but most likely more a 72-hour recycle, somewhere in that area of, like, if it goes good, you're talking about 2 days. If it goes bad, we are talking about 3 days. So yeah, they need to bring in a lot of tankers. They need to especially restorage this nitrogen. The methane, not so much, because they will recondense most of it, because you don't want to emit methane into the atmosphere if you can avoid it. But yeah, of course, the nitrogen would be requiring several tankers. And that's also part of this problem that Sawyer talked about earlier in the show, that the problem of this situation that SpaceX is in right now. They have Saturday and Sunday. Monday, the weather gets bad. It stays bad until Wednesday. Thursday is the Thanksgiving blockage. So you have the situation of, like, kind of one attempt. Because if you try Saturday and you get into a countdown, there ain't no attempt on Sunday. It's not happening. Sunday is, like, totally not in the window for an attempt if you try on Saturday. So they have probably one shot, and if they don't do it there, we are suddenly getting very close to the 27th to 28th of November.
Right, and I guess if they fuel on Saturday and anything happens, it ain't happening, right? That's kind of where we'll be at if they start using any of those propellants there. And just so, for those of you just tuning in, so a lot of people come and go, where we are at right now, as you can see, yesterday we had a stacked rocket and a launch license. Today we have a launch license and an unstacked rocket because there are some problems with the grid fin actuator motors. And I think Kevin tells me we have some footage of the tests that they ran, which resulted in the outcome in which we had to destack the rocket and repair this part. I don't think we'll be able to see the problem in this footage that Kevin's got for us, but it does give you an idea as to what exactly it was that they were testing a little bit earlier. And these are coming from our cameras that NSF has on site. You can see those grid fins moving there. They look very similar to the Falcon 9 grid fins. However, these do not retract. They are out all the time. And eventually those grid fins will be used to help that booster get back to the launch complex so that it can be refueled and sent back up again. And they had something go wrong on there. And this is why they have to destack, because the part they need to replace is basically, sorry if I'm not mistaken, behind or underneath the hot staging ring. So the whole thing has to come apart to get to that spot.
Yeah, pretty much all the access points that they need for these systems are underneath where that hot staging ring is on the booster. There's no other way to get to it, unfortunately, than to take the ship off, take the hot staging ring off, and go in. Especially if you need to replace an entire actuator like that, to get it out of there, it doesn't really fit through the small little gap in the hot stage ring that's meant for exhaust. So it's, you know, like we said, they're getting good at it, they're quick at it, but it's still a very involved procedure.
Right, and it is a day that it costs them a day, but not 2 or 3 weeks like it might have on prior systems. And this actually answers John Doker's question here, who was asking why do they have to remove that. And some more questions here from the super chat from Marvin Hu about the hot staging ring. Why don't they leave it attached to Starship when destacking it to avoid using the crane? And I guess the question is, the crane doesn't really add all that much time to this because the crane's already there, Adrian, right? It's just a matter of bringing that support structure in that lifts it off. That takes a little bit of time, but beyond that, it's not a huge killer of of flow here, is it?
Absolutely, and you would need to modify the ship stand, which might be a problem because the ship stand right now is designed to become be used for a ship to stand on it. So if you have suddenly a hot staging ring in there, you have a different structure, and also you kind of put a part that is structurally modified at the bottom of something you store. It's like, I don't know, it feels like something that might also not be optimal to store because it's not really adding you anything. It's not really something that feels like they should need to do. So I think it's just because right now it works that way, and I don't think before they have a hatch stay in there, if they ever add a hatch, this hot stage ring would ever be in any way non-detachable on anything as well, because I saw that question.
Right, yeah, for that...
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, sorry for that. You want to be able to access the booster itself. So if, like you say, if you put it on top, you lose that access, if it's there permanently. I've seen people saying, well, then just stick it on the ship. The other issue with that is the fact that, once it separates, the whole point is that the hot staging ring goes along with the booster until, as we learned yesterday, they then, for now, jettison it. But in the future, if they're able to get it to stay on there and bring it back and reuse it, you kind of want it attached to the booster as opposed to the ship. So that's mainly the reason why. All of this, again, right now, because of these grid fins, which, yes, I'm wearing a Falcon 9 shirt, but it has the grid fins on it. And this shirt, by the way, is from shop.nasaspaceflight.com, right, Lon?
That's right, Sawyer. And you know what's really hot is all the great new merchandise we got at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, especially for the holidays. So get you don't need a hot staging ring to look hot in your knitted sweater. If you have the ugly sweater day at work, you're going to be the star of the show. Look at this. Isn't this beautiful? I'll tell you what, NSF gear is the best gear out there. And as I always say, I know I'm like a broken record with this, but this is a really important pro tip, is that I'm really hard to shop for. So put this on your computers, your phones, your iPads, put it in front of your significant other, and they will be able to see what you may want for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for any of the holidays that are coming up. Got a Starbase one there. We've got a little Dragon one with parachutes, knitted sweaters, and we are all working tirelessly to knit these for you. All of us elves here at NSF. I know Sawyer did about 5 of them yesterday. I'm a little behind on my beanies here, but this is some great stuff. You can't find it anywhere else. So check it out. And we also, of course, still have all of our Orbital Flight Test 2 merchandise out there, including some super high resolution embroidered patches. But look at the detail on these knitted items here. Really nice stuff.
Yeah, they actually knit those sweaters, by the way. Not by us, but they are really nice quality knit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I would pay more if you knitted it for me, Sawyer. Little personal touches, right? But my mom's a knitter, so maybe I'll have her make a few for us. Now, these are the patches that we've had for a little while now, but they're still in limited supply. This is for our Flight Test 2. High resolution embroidery, it looks great. And this image, look at that. This image is available on a bunch of other items as well, like pillows and water bottles and all sorts of stuff. So you go to shop.nasaspaceflight.com. You can check it out. We also have calendars for the new year. We even have a calendar there you can see with all of Elon's toys out for display, his Cybertruck and his rocket engine. He's living like the ultimate Gen X dream of having all this stuff. I wanted my own space program when I was a kid. But you can put this up on your wall and share your love of the space program. Unfortunately for us, we're not going to see a launch tomorrow if you're just tuning in. We have delayed it, well, we didn't, but SpaceX delayed it for a day. Although some people said it was all DOS's fault, but I don't think so. And what we're looking at right now is the Starship once again getting destacked. We've covered a lot of these stackings and restackings here on the channel. And what they're going to be doing next is removing the hot staging ring with that crane over there. And then once they do that, they're going to be working on grid fin actuators that apparently failed during testing, which is good that they tested it and it failed then versus the rocket being, in the atmosphere. So they will be fixing that, and we are looking at a 1-day push right now to Saturday at 7 a.m. Central Time, and the window is very narrow. It goes to only 7:20, so they have a very short window in which to lift off. And as we mentioned, if they fuel up and they get everything going and they don't launch, it'll likely delay it further, and they've got some complications with the Thanksgiving holiday and road closure rules and that sort of thing. So we will keep an eye on this and let you all know. what is happening here. We still have more chats here to come up with. And this is actually something we didn't talk about here from Matt PD with a super chat. He says, I imagine they may count down to about 5 to 10 minutes before the opening of the window and hold at 40 seconds. And Sawyer, there is like a built-in 40-second hold that they've used before with Starship. Isn't that the case?
Exactly, yeah. We've seen them do that a couple of times during testing, even during the actual first flight itself. They have that T-minus 40-second hold where before they give the final go, where they can take a look at things and go, all right, are all the systems good? Is our fuel levels good? Temperatures, pressures. You want to make sure that everything is exactly right before you get into that final, really terminal part of the count. Because at that point, it's very difficult. I don't want to say impossible, but it's a lot more difficult to hold and potentially reset when you get that far in. So that's just that last minute stopping point. They have the same thing with ULA, does the same thing for Atlas of stopping and going, all right, let's double check, make sure everything's good before we continue the count and get really into that deep part. So don't be surprised if they hold. Last time, I believe the hold was 5 minutes. So they went only 5 minutes into the window, but they're not going to hold at, 5 minutes before the window. They're not going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds. It would be in the window at T-minus 40 seconds before. That's when they would hold.
And the good news is we won't have 2 hours of drama here. We're going to know pretty quick whether they're going or not, because there's just no window there for them to have some. There's no extra time built in here, so they got to get it up or not. And we don't know, Adrian, what the window would look like on Sunday, do we? Would it be a little longer, or we're not sure?
I think it's hard. Like, we could probably look at the TFRs, but I'm not sure if we know the exact window yet, because there was also, we had a bit of a different expectation for Friday's window, and then we are and basically with this window, it kind of surprises how short it is. And it's also not only sometimes only TFR factors, it's also range factors of, like, as Sawyer said before, there's a million factors that you need to ensure to make a rocket launch safe and right, and also you don't want to hit objects on the way. So that's
hitting objects on the way is bad.
You need clearance both in the waters, because it will be overflying water, so that's why you've got the note Mars, notice to mariners. Obviously the air, you don't want to hit an airplane by accident or have debris hit an airplane, worst case scenario. So that's the NOTAMs, which is now known as the notice to air missions. And the other one that people don't really think about is there are cutouts for space. There, as we joke about space, the infinite and all of that, space is kind of cluttered right now, especially in low Earth orbit. So you got to make sure that there's not satellites passing overhead that you might hit too. So if there's a potential cutout where they have to wait a couple more seconds, there's that to watch for too. So you have to look at the ground, the water, the air, and the space, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of those satellites are SpaceX satellites, no less. You have Starlink flying around up there that you have to navigate around. So all of that impacts the launch window there. So it's getting crowded up in orbit, and certainly that's something you have to consider there. We will shortly have some updates from the field, and it looks like we're ready now. So let's go out to Boca Chica, where we've got Adam joining us with a weather update. Hey, Adam, how's it going out there? First of all, before we get to the weather update, because I want to know what the vibe is there, because yesterday, we had the launch license getting announced. We're watching the rocket go up. It's like, this is happening. It's on. What's the mood out there today? It was kind of a party atmosphere yesterday. I would imagine a little disappointing news here to kind of bring the mood down a little bit, huh?
I'm actually just a few miles outside of Boca Chica, so I don't know what the mood is there. I just literally got down here a few minutes ago, so I don't know what the vibe is. I'm sure everybody was real anxious for tomorrow morning, and might be 24 more hours we have to wait. I know a lot of people are anxious. Well, we gave you a forecast on Friday what the weather is, but now we're probably wondering, well, what's Saturday morning going to be like? Well, I have that for you.
We are. Yeah, let's hear it. A lot of people in the chat wanted to hear your weather report, so go ahead.
So one thing you probably noticed behind me, it's beautiful clear skies here. It's like picture perfect day down here. The main thing with it is we will continue to see this through tomorrow. We'll see the same thing. Saturday, there's some question marks. We could end up seeing where maybe some low clouds can filter in. I'm going to look at more data, so don't get too nervous just yet. We'll look at it tomorrow. More model data will come in. Sometimes it's hard to predict those low clouds when we get a little bit of a wind shift coming in out of the north. But the main thing is, what about for the actual directional shear or shear aloft for a launch? Friday obviously still looks great. That's probably off the table now. But now let's look at Saturday. Saturday, actually, the directional shear goes up only like a smidge. So it's not very much. To me, it would still be within probably threshold for them. Now, Sunday, there's some question marks. I looked over last launch and comparing last launch with this new one coming up for Sunday, there's a little bit more directional shear. And last time I remember they said that they're right at the threshold last time. So this exceeds probably close to that threshold, if not a little more. So Sunday, I have some question marks. Now, Sunday's still a few days out. Models can change. We all know that. And then if we look further into the week, say we go into, say they push this further off like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving, weather still doesn't look that great. So
fight the weather.
Okay. Kevin wants me to fight with you about the weather. I know nothing about the weather other than what the temperature is. But
I was kind of curious. I was wondering what the fight was about. I was like, what, we were about to fight about something?
I don't know. It might have been the wrong button. I kind of like you. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight you. But
we're trying to fight Mother Nature here to make it work.
Yeah, right.
That's the problem. I can only do predictions, but I wish I could control the weather. But at least right now, I mean, if we're pushing for Saturday morning, at least the shear itself looks to still be within range. And the only question mark and I'll update y'all on it, is will visibility at the surface, meaning us standing there looking at it, will it look fine? And I'll update y'all tomorrow on that as more models come in, because I don't want to get y'all's hopes up just yet, but it's just something we're watching. So.
And Adam, let me ask you this question, because this came up in the chat a couple of times. There's no way to get real-time upper level wind measurement unless you've got a balloon up there. So you often have to take a reading and go off of that, whereas at the lower level, you obviously have ways to measure the wind more in a more timely fashion and certainly on a more ongoing basis. Is that the case? Are there ways in which we could look at measuring upper level winds on a real-time basis and maybe find a way to punch through a brief lull in them, or do they kind of behave differently?
So basically in meteorology, we have weather balloons like you were mentioning. They go up. It actually gives us a true profile. And they normally will launch these also prior to any kind of launch, because it gives you real data in real time. Computer models are just guessing. And so with fluid dynamics, it's very hard for computer models to really estimate and guess stuff right. So that's why they normally launch weather balloons. The other crucial thing that we can kind of look at and sometimes use is airplanes, but aircraft have instruments on them, but they only normally go up to about 30,000 feet. So while a weather balloon will go sometimes up into almost the tropopause. So it goes up much higher. We're talking about probably like 33. The last balloon launch I think I looked at was like somewhere between 33 and 35,000 kilometers up. So they go up pretty high. And so normally there is a weather service office here in Brownsville, which is very near that site. They launch a balloon anyways every day at 00Z and 12Z, which right now Central Time, that would be 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So they'll be launching one at 6 a.m. Now, whether or not, I don't know if SpaceX actually launches one, but I know Brownsville does launch one, and they might go by that data, or they might actually even launch their own balloon to actually get real data. But that's the best way. Even during severe weather, when we go out in the field, like if we can launch a weather balloon, we can more accurately tell you what's going on than just computer models having to guess what that profile looks like. So that's why I always say the models can change in a few days, so don't always just pin it down to one forecast.
Don't shoot the weatherman. Go ahead, Adrian. You had a question for
Please don't.
Yeah. Adam. another question here, Adam, because right now, of course, we are talking about Saturday, Sunday for the first attempt, but if that scrubs, we would quickly go into this Monday to Wednesday area, and I know the last time we talked about it, it was looking to be very iffy. Has that improved in any way, or are we still looking at very iffy conditions for Monday to Wednesday?
Monday through Wednesday, we're still looking at iffy conditions. We have another approaching storm system. We're actually expecting a cold front to push through here by probably Monday evening or so. But ahead of that storm system is a lot more stronger winds. And so you get a lot more stronger winds aloft, and you have to worry about also winds at the ground. So a lot of times when you get a storm system in, you can get winds that will be more directional depending on the angle of the storm system coming in. And also, not so much Monday, but Tuesday and Wednesday, I think we might introduce like slight rain chances too into it. So it'll be cloudy, possible rain as that system comes in.
So we've got a lot going on out there, and I know you guys must be exhausted out in the field there, but we appreciate you dialing in. The one good thing about this delay to Saturday from Friday is that you can at least get some sleep tonight, hopefully, or maybe not.
Yeah, that would definitely be great. Yeah, because the whole team, all of NSF team, from even the first flight, it is nonstop. Nobody really gets much sleep. They just take little power cat naps and get right back into it. So more power to everybody on the team.
Can I say one more quick question before you go?
Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
So we're talking about these upper level winds and out of the limits and things like that. What kind of speeds are we talking about here with these winds? And what were the kind of limits that we saw for the first flight that make it iffy?
So the first flight, so there's a lot that goes into it. So obviously we're talking about a lot of fluid dynamics over a course of a large area. I had to figure out since they don't really give us like details of like the engineering aspects of the rocket ship of like, oh, this is the threshold. All I heard from last time is they weren't so concerned about any kind of shear except for directional. So that gave me a very good clue of knowing what to look for, because what you also have is directional means that the winds are actually changing as you go up with height. A lot of times that happens at the lowest 3 kilometer level. And evidently that's rough on a rocket because you're changing the winds as it's trying to go up, and it goes up pretty quick. So that's probably a lot of stress on it. The winds normally aloft, as you get past 3 kilometers, normally go into what we call speed shear, which just means the winds increase with height. And the winds aloft, they do go up over 50 plus knots, but last time they did too. But directional shear is what we have to look at, and we're looking at directional shear numbers at the 0 to 3 kilometer being roughly 25 knots is about what it was last time, which was kind of good levels. And this time I'm looking, and then some models are saying 38 to 42 knots. And so it's a lot more directional shear. And so I'm getting a little nervous that last time they said they were going to analyze it, and they must have launched another balloon to figure out if they should. And they said it was okay. So I actually saved that profile of a weather balloon launch that morning, and that way I can go back and look based upon it. So there's probably a lot more into it than that. I'm sure there's also certain speed shear criteria that would have to be met too if it was too strong. But just from going by what I've heard from last time, it just seems like right now Sunday would start becoming the iffy limits. But to me, Friday and Saturday both seem fine.
Well, we're going to keep our fingers crossed here and hope that Saturday is the day that we see this enormous rocket lift off the pad. We're going to have some great views for everyone watching because we've got cameras all over the place. Our new camera trailer is activated and operating. In fact, a lot of the views that we've been getting today are from that. And it's awesome that at NSF we've got rocket experts, weather experts, everybody. So thank you, Adam, for joining us and giving us some great insight into what we can expect and what we can hope for. And, if there's anything we can do to affect the weather, we will all do it so that it happens. And thanks again for coming on, and please get some rest because there's a lot of excitement coming up. As they say, excitement is guaranteed with Starship, one way or the other. So we will definitely be checking back in with you again. And before we wrap up here, we do have a few more super chats and other chats to acknowledge. So I want to thank Carl Nelson, who did a $10 super chat and then followed it up with another one. So thank you very much for your support. Here's a question, maybe a fight question for Adrian and Sawyer here. Josh is wondering, what do you think SpaceX will attempt to catch first, the ship or the booster? That's a good question. My guess would be the booster because that's got the most engines on it. What do you guys think?
Based on the fact that they are already trying soft water splashdowns with this launch and kind of testing out the profile, and here it comes, Sawyer, testing out the waters. I think it's the booster, and based on everything SpaceX has said already, and Elon Musk had said in previous interviews, I think it will be the booster.
All right, my turn.
I want some drama here. Come on.
I think the biggest indicator is the fact, as you mentioned, that for this flight profile, the booster is expected to do the flip, attempt to burn, and then try to slow itself down as if it were attempting a landing over the Gulf. Whereas Ship 25, they are going to have it go in with the heat shield, and then other than that, it's just yeet away. Good luck, goodbye. I think that's kind of the indicator that we're expecting to see them focus mainly on that booster catch first. Plus, keep in mind, we have seen the booster in action. The ship, we have never seen it in action to this point. We didn't get there in the first flight test. We haven't seen the heat shield tiles, if they work or not, because even back when they were doing the flip tests, you're only going, 10 kilometers? So you haven't really had the need to test that heat shield either. So I think the primary is going to be the booster, and then the primary thing for the ship is, on this flight A, testing out the sea level and the vacuum raptors, and then B, seeing what's even going on with those heat shield tiles. Will they work? And more importantly, will the way that they have them attached to the ship work? As we've already had to see them repair tiles, add tiles to Ship 25 before it even flew.
And I think, too, what we'll see here as we're rolling forward is that if they don't have to make huge, significant changes to either the spacecraft, which they'll probably make some changes to, but not maybe significant ones as they keep rolling forward here, and to the ground systems, that we might not have as much regulatory hurdles to keep jumping over. So perhaps we'll see how this launch goes. If it goes well, I would predict the cadence of getting to that point where we can test landing something might be sooner rather than later, although still probably a ways off. Apocalypse Cow, thank you very much for gifting 10 Red Team memberships, along with John here, who gifted 5. And one of the best parts about the NSF community is if you hang out and chat long enough, you might have a generous benefactor give you a membership to get all sorts of cool member benefits on the channel here. Musical Wolves wants to know maybe they can replace the fin with bacon. I think anything can help. Maybe some bacon grease will get those fins working better, right? A little lubricant. RC Horseman, 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for your support. And here's a question from Josh. How many Starship stacks can a Mechazilla stack if a Mechazilla could stack Starship stacks? In other words, do they ever have to replace the cables? That's a serious question now, to make up for stretching or fatigue. And I would imagine over time, I don't know which one of you wants to take this one, but I would imagine over time, you got to keep an eye on fatigue because you are lifting a lot of weight frequently, especially with this current regimen here. What do you think, guys?
Nothing is forever, especially not cables right next to the ocean. So
that's right, you get salt water too, right?
Yeah, I think there is some limit for these. They will be replaced at some point. Everything in such a hardware and infrastructure will be replaced at some point or will need major refurbishment. That's the nature of being next to the Gulf of Mexico, which means you're exposed to salty air, which is usually not good for basically anything that wants to sustain anything. You also have the situation of having all of this infrastructure next to the most powerful rocket of all time. So you have like 2 very counterproductive factors to make something really sustainable. So everything here at some point will need replacement. The question is just when will it hit the limit and how long will that take? I don't think SpaceX knows at this point, and we will find out on the way.
And the other thing that we saw with, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, the other thing that we saw with Artemis was there was the concern of how many times can they roll the vehicle back and forth before they put too much stress on it? How long is the flight termination system there before it needs to be recertified? That's something that we don't have to deal with in this particular rocket because it's not going back and forth all the time. I'm sure there's probably a number of times they don't want to have to keep lifting it in that sense. So if you're talking the vehicle itself, but I believe that this is less of an issue in terms of stressing it since you're not rolling it. It's just adding it back on top, although you probably don't want it out there continuously stacked back and forth for like another 6-8 months.
So we will keep an eye on that. I'm sure we will. Our cameras will pick up when they do the cable replacements for sure there. So good stuff there. And we're going to wrap up a few other questions here. Stephen with the store message, just a nice message here about all the work that we're doing. And we greatly appreciate everyone's support, everyone who does the super chat, who buys something from the store, but also everyone who watches because communities really are about the people. And we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. What we are going to be keeping an eye on, of course, is what's going to happen over the next 24 hours or so. The hot staging ring still has to be removed. They have to make those repairs to the grid fin actuators. And then, of course, we'll be following developments here on NSF, both on this show, which we will probably be doing again, and also just pop in coverage as to when big events are occurring. So what we expect to happen next is the hot staging ring to come off. They're going to make the repairs. We're going to have another stack. And then hopefully Saturday, which is the new launch date, Saturday at 7 a.m. Central Time, and that window extends to 7:20 a.m. And we will keep an eye on everything, including the fact that we've got quite a number of people out in the field right now. So I want to thank Das, Roger, Adam, Jack, and Sean. They have been really killing themselves out there. They are exhausted and really working hard to get everything in place. We've got this awesome new trailer that is doing some amazing camera work that you've been seeing throughout the last couple of days of the show. So they are ready to go here. And this trailer is awesome. It's got Starlink, it's got solar power, it's got LTE, 5G, you name your radio frequency, it will do it. And it is ready to go. It is replacing Danger Van, and we expect
there it is, by the way.
There it is. We're looking at it right now. So
and it looks like remote cameras too that will be hopefully triggered during the launch and get us some great images, both that we'll be able to share on social media, and we can probably add to Adrian's wall.
And they could become metal prints in the NSF store. So there's a lot that you'll be able to get from those cameras. And one of the things I love about remote cameras is that everybody's got their own method. So some people use mailboxes. You can do the tape in the garbage bag, whatever. Those cameras work. And we're looking forward to seeing what comes out of those. So keep an eye on all the awesome stuff that is coming from our team out there. And the trailer, which we will be talking more about as we work our way through the week here. I want to thank the production team because we have a lot of people on call for production. So we got Kevin, who's been running things behind the scenes and talking in my ear, which is great. I love hearing Kevin's voice in my ear. He's such a pleasant voice. Kevin, Gage, Jay, Elisar, Ryan, Katon, and Patrick. I want to thank Adam for jumping in with the weather update. And of course, I want to thank Sawyer and Adrian. It's always a pleasure to be with you all. I don't think I've co-hosted with Adrian yet, so it was great to interact with you in voice versus Discord, where we usually chat. And it looks like my instructions from the back hallway, or the production room, is that we'll be back at the same time and place tomorrow for an update. And what we hope to see is that rocket stacked and a launch date that stays to Saturday. And if something interesting happens, of course, we'll jump in. So hit that bell icon and you'll get notified every time we pop on. And remember, we got 24/7 feeds also. So keep an eye on things. We'll be keeping an eye on things and keeping you updated. So we'll see you again tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week here. And that is going to do it for this countdown to launch. And we're counting down to Saturday, 7 a.m. Central Time. So tune back in for more updates. Until next time, this is Lon Seidman on behalf of NSF. Thank you all for watching.
And here we go.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up.
Water towers, fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
Oh my God!
Décollage! Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?